everyone, we are back testing the Audeze LCD-1 versus the Rane commercial RH50. Don't worry about that. Nothing to see here. So we've already discussed the bass and the mids response for both of these headphones. We're going to talk about the treble response. What I want to do is just get right into it, talk about the songs, go over the songs, rush through it because I already know the conclusion here, but I want to get you through the steps as well. And at the end, we're going to do a full, thorough analysis and summary of both of these headphones head to head. And if you want to get to that, just click on the timestamp below if you want to get to the conclusion, and that way you'll get to the nitty-gritty much faster. Actually, you'll skip the nitty-gritty and you'll get to the conclusion. So if you just want to listen to the nitty-gritty first, here we go. We have both headphones plugged into an AB switch, which is itself plugged into the Monolith THX887 amplifier set at medium gain, currently at 9 o'clock volume, being fed by the SMSL SU8 through XLR balanced. Obviously not balanced because this does not come balanced. You could theoretically make this balanced if you were so inclined, but I am not. All right, so let's just get on with it, shall we? We've got the LCD-1 on my head, and we're going to start with Scherzo For X-Wings. Here we go. And 9 o'clock with Scherzo is pretty muted. I'm going to increase the volume. And I'm going to take it up to about 11. And at 11 o'clock, it actually comes alive. You can start hearing the instruments, but there is very little treble harshness here. In fact, I would say that the treble is significantly rolled off for the LCD-1. You can hear a little bit of that energy with the horns and the brass, but there's not a whole lot of clarity there. It sounds more muffled. And you don't get the soundstage either. It sounds like, you know, when you talk and then you clamp your hands over your ears and then you talk and you listen, that's the effect I'm kind of getting here. It's just very narrow soundstage with the LCD-1 on this song. There's not a particularly good separation of group sets, and by group sets I mean the brass, the percussion, the horns, and all that stuff. It just sounds pretty blended together. And there's a potpourri of sounds here, potpourri of instruments that are very difficult to separate. Every once in a while something will cut through, a horn will cut through, a brass will cut through, but the individual notes you really are missing out. I'm going to increase the volume from 11 to 12. And that bump up in volume does not help with the separation, so giving more power doesn't actually help the situation any. And by the way, now you're listening exceptionally loudly. Let's bring it back down to 9 o'clock. This would be normal listening volume at 9 o'clock, and at 9 o'clock it just sounds kind of blended together. I wouldn't say necessarily muddy, but definitely muffled. And that's not the energy that you expect from a song like Scherzo For X-Wings, which is supposed to evoke a whole lot of emotion and excitement and all that sort of stuff. And the LCD-1 mutes the experience, blunts the treble response. So in one respect, it doesn't get harsh or ear-piercing, which is good if you're very sensitive to that sort of stuff. But it also doesn't give you all the energy that's inherent in the music. And increasing the volume, providing more power to the headphones, does not solve the problem. The other issue is the fact that it's just a very narrow soundstage for this. I mean, you're listening to an orchestra. The landscape is supposed to be rather wide. It's not supposed to sound like you're listening to some cheap JBL speakers in your bedroom, in your mom's house, at the age of 14. Right? I mean, it's not supposed to be that way. These are $400, but unfortunately, this song sounds less than average soundstage with the LCD-1, and more power does not equal more soundstage on this. So, unfortunately, that's the downfall of the driver Audeze decided to use. Let's switch up here and let's go to the Rane. Got the Rane on my head. Let's restart this song, and here we go. Obviously 9 o'clock is much too low here, so I'm going to increase to 10, 11, 12. So 12 o'clock is about where 11 o'clock LCD-1 was. And immediately you hear wider soundstage. So where the LCD-1 was here, the rate is about here. So there's definitely a wider soundstage. I hear the energy of the instruments. There's a bit more clarity there. In fact, I can hear the brass and I can hear the horns separately. They're not melded together like it is with the LCD-1. I'm going to increase the volume so that it's volume matched to noon on the LCD-1. So I'm going to take it up to 1 o'clock. We're at 1 o'clock. And you could definitely hear that energy in the horns, the brass, the percussion. You could hear the separate group sets. Horns on the left, brass on the right. They don't get muddied, they don't get distorted, they don't get jumbled together. It's no longer a potpourri of music as there was with the LCD-1. Excellent treble extension where you could hear the energy there without it being ear-piercing or harsh. There's a bit of air in the music that simply wasn't present with the LCD-1, probably because of the closed-off soundstage of the LCD-1. I'm going to bring down volume back down to about 10 o'clock. And 10 o'clock is basically 9 o'clock on the LCD-1. And there, even at that point, where we're talking about essentially the same volume at, fairly low volume, sitting in your house, headphones on, nothing's going on around you, so you don't need to turn up the volume any. At that volume setting for both headphones, the Rane simply sounds wider and has a more clarity to it. Now, I would say that with more power, the Rane's driver does change a little bit. If you go from, say, 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock, a little bit more power to the Rane actually opens up the driver a little bit more, and the soundstage increases just a tiny bit perceptibly, just a little bit more. However, the clarity and all that stuff doesn't change. Just the bit more energy, more power into the Rane does provide a slight difference in the soundscape. Whereas with the LCD-1, you can keep turning it up until your ears bleed, and it's not gonna add clarity, it's not gonna add soundstage, it's just gonna be what it is. Okay? Now let's go to one of my favorite songs, Flight from the City by Johan Johansson. And we are set on the LCD-1. Here we go. We're currently at 10 o'clock. I'm going to bring down to 9. And 9 is a fairly easy to listen volume for this song. The piano sounds a bit muffled. Yeah, it sounds almost like there's some bed sheet or a layer over the piano, and you don't get that natural resonance of the piano. Instead, what you got is air hitting and going through the piano and then hitting like some sort of bed sheet or some covering and then passing on to your ears. That muffled nature to it takes away a bit of that energy from the music. Let's increase the volume. Let's go to 10 o'clock. And 10 o'clock does not solve the problem. Now 10 o'clock is fairly loud for this song. I probably won't listen to it any louder than this. You could hear, there's no distortion here, but there's also no clarity to the piano. It sounds really muffled. Now I'm listening for the creaking of the bench or the seat of the pianist, and I don't hear it clearly. Let's go back to the very beginning, because at the very beginning you are supposed to hear it right there. So about 2 seconds into the song, you can hear him, and excuse me as I do this, because right now what's going to happen is you're going to watch the camera move, but the pianist is basically moving a little bit, right? Emphasizing just a little bit, and that creaking is supposed to be pronounced. The LCD-1 just muffles that sound so you miss it. If you didn't know it was there, you would totally miss it. Now, I've listened to the song, I don't know how many, hundreds of times, and so I know where those micro details are, and I know where to pick them out. But first initial listening, I didn't hear it. So when I go back and I'm looking for it, I'm listening for it, I know it's right there the moment that you press play at the beginning of the song. It's so muffled that it's easy to miss. And we're at 10 o'clock. We're at 10 o'clock on the dial, which means that this is fairly loud as it is. But you know what? Just to say that I'm fair, I'm going to keep playing this. I'm going to increase the volume to 11 and restart and see if there's a volume change in that particular micro detail, okay? So we're at 10 o'clock. I'm going to increase to 11. We're about at 11, maybe a little bit more. Let's restart to here. And it's still muffled. You can hear it, but it's just really muffled sound. The more power you add, you get a little bit more out of it. But now at 11 o'clock, essentially a little bit over 11 o'clock, this song is really loud on these headphones. And so how much louder are you going to drive the LCD-1 to get that micro detail? Now, maybe you're the type that says, I don't really care about the micro detail. I just want to enjoy the music. Well, the problem is the soundstage is so small on this song, and the piano sounds muffled that I'm not quite sure what you're supposed to be listening to, what you're supposed to be taking out of the song. Because the character of the song is frankly being missed here. It's not supposed to sound as muffled as it is. It's not supposed to sound muffled at all, but the LCD-1 simply presents it that way. Okay, so let's switch to the Rane. And we're going to keep it at 11 o'clock, which will be about volume matched to 10 o'clock to the LCD-1. And let's restart. Oh, absolutely. So the micro detail, that creaking of the bench, is sharper, more clear, immediately noticeable on the Rane. And 11 o'clock is essentially 10 o'clock volume on the LCD-1. So I can bring it down to 10 o'clock and see how it sounds versus the LCD-1. So let's bring it up to about 10 o'clock, which would be about 9 o'clock here on the LCD-1. And let's listen. Oops. And let's listen here. Yeah. So at 10 o'clock, the micro detail sounds about the same as it does on 9 o'clock on the LCD-1. But when you increase the volume, say, let's go to 11 o'clock, and we restart it, that micro detail jumps out. The more power you give to the Rane, the better the driver tends to resolve, which is not the case for the LCD-1. Now, this is the second time I've mentioned this. A bit more power to the Rane, a little bit more responsiveness from the driver. Let's keep playing. Already wider soundstage. The piano sounds cleaner and clearer than on the LCD-1. The LCD-1 has a more muffled sound signature. Oh my goodness. The one thing that you could not hear on the LCD-1 that you can on the Rane is that when the pianist is playing, you can actually hear the reverberation of not just the string, but also the hammer coming back down after the key's been pressed, right? So you press the key, move on to the next key, move on to the next key. So you can actually hear the continuing reverberation after the string has been hit by the hammer. With the LCD-1, it just sounds really muffled. You can't pick up that micro detail that the Rane really does present clearly. Now, if you increase the volume incredibly loud on the LCD-1 and you were really paying attention, you could probably pick out some of that energy, some of that reverberation, but you're not struggling in the same way on the RH50, and you're not struggling with the RH50, where it's just clearly presenting it, and the LCD-1 doesn't. Let's keep going. And remember I said that the LCD-1 sounded like there's something over the piano, something veiling the piano. Not so on the Rane. It just sounds like you are standing about 15 feet away from the piano in a medium-sized room. There's nothing blocking you from listening to this. The electric buzz that's at the very bottom layer of this song clearly is present. It was present on the LCD-1 as well, but it was much more muffled. Yeah. So it's just the cello, the piano, the micro details, the buzzing, and all that sort of stuff on the RH50 is cleaner, clearer, more crisp than on the LCD-1. It's a pretty significant difference when you do this A and B test, where this cheapo $50 headphone has a more present experience of the music than the $400 headphone. Go figure. All right, let's go to the last one, which is New Light by Kazuki. And we're gonna, where are we? We're gonna bring this down to 9, and then we're gonna take it up to 10 o'clock. So we're gonna leave that at 10 o'clock, and here we go. So I hear kids, but they sound really, really muffled. The kids are supposed to be playing in the background of this song, and God, they sound muffled. As if that element that in the music, in the mix, somebody forgot to increase the volume on that in the mixing booth. You can easily miss it. And 10 o'clock here is fairly loud for this song. I could hear some of the wind rustling through the grass. It's not particularly clear, but you can hear that. I hear the piano, the guitar. There's a synth music that's increasing in volume. There's, I would say there's fairly decent separation between the guitar and the synth music. But in a few moments, all of that stuff is going to increase in volume. You're going to get the crescendo. So let's skip ahead a little bit. So it's about 1 minute and 20 seconds. And right now, you have the crescendo. The synth music is on top, full volume. You could hear the piano, barely. And you can barely hear the guitar. But it's fairly muffled in comparison to the synth. The synth just jumps out. All the other elements are subdued significantly. Okay. Soundstage narrow. I would say average to below average soundstage on this song. And this is supposed to be a fairly wide sounding song because it's supposed to invoke presence that you're outside somewhere in a large expansive field. And the LCD-1 not so well. All right, so we're going to count the footsteps. As you know, I count footsteps from the first 60 seconds of the song. And the gold standard is the focal clear at 16. And I want to know how many, I mean, we already know, we've already done this test, but we're going to do this comparison, how many footsteps I can actually count. I'm only going to number the ones that I can hear, not the ones I know that are there, the ones that I actually hear. I'm going to leave the volume at 10 o'clock, which is a little bit over what is typical listening volume in a quiet room with the headphones on. Okay, so here we go. I'm just going to count out as I hear the footsteps crunching on the grass. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, that was a close one. I couldn't tell. 7. Okay. So in the first 60 seconds, I heard 6 to 7. Now, when I said 6, I was like, I wasn't really sure if that was really a footstep that I heard or what, but I will give it to the LCD-1 because it needs all the help it can get. 6 to 7 footsteps that I can count within the first 60 seconds. Okay? Keep that in mind. Now, let us switch to the Rane. And I'm going to increase the volume from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock so we can try to volume match here. Okay? There we are. And let's start. Much wider soundstage. So the LCD-1 was here. The Rane is here. Right? This is not a little bit. This is significant. 10% of battery left. You can hear the kids in the background. They sound about the same as they did on the LCD-1, unfortunately. They should sound more present, but they just sound as muffled on as they did on the LCD-1. I can hear the wind rustling through the grass. I hear the synth, I hear the piano, I hear the guitar. The guitar and the piano have good separation. On the LCD-1, it sounded more muddy, more muted, more muffled. Let's skip ahead to about 1 minute and 20 seconds during the crescendo, right here. And that synth actually sounds clearer on the RH50 than it did on the LCD-1. And even when that synth is playing at max volume, I can hear the piano in the background. It doesn't sound muted and muffled like and veiled like it did on the LCD-1. There's still energy in that synth that simply wasn't present on the LCD-1, where the synth just sounded, it just sounded louder, not clearer. Where on the RH50, it sounds louder and clearer. And I just, it's a big difference, I would say. When you do an A and B test, I think it's a fairly big difference that it's immediately noticeable. It's not something that you have to worry about. Give me a second. How much battery do I have left? I got 7% battery. That should be enough for me to do the counting footsteps test. Okay, so we're going to leave the volume at 11 o'clock, and here we go. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Within the first 60 seconds, I heard 8. Versus the LCD's 6 to 7. Meh, 6 to 7. We'll give it 7 because, as I said, the LCD-1 needs the help. No doubt, 8. And here's the thing. The LCD-1, the RH50, the footsteps sound crystal clear and crisp compared to the LCD-1. And the LCD-1 sounds muffled. And I was struggling to hear those footsteps, try to get them out from the mix. The Rane, you don't have to struggle. Once you hear that first footstep, it's like, oh yeah, that's a footstep crunching down on dry grass. And then a few moments later, on the left ear cup, you hear crunch, crunch again. And then you hear another crunch, crunch, crunch. On the Rane, it's easy to hear it. On the LCD-1, I'm struggling. I'm really trying to listen for those sounds. And it's simply not presenting that detail. Okay, 6 to 7 at best, 8. There you go. Slight difference. I know, slight difference, but it's a noticeable one. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to charge this GoPro thing, and I'm going to come back and we're going to do the conclusion. Okay, so we got to figure out what's going on with the LCD-1. And we need to figure it out in the most logical way we can. Because the LCD-1 has so far not excelled at all. It didn't excel with the HD 6XX or 650. It certainly didn't excel with the Hi-Fi Man Sundara. And with a significantly cheaper headphone, it can't excel. So my question is, what is going on? Now, the first possibility could be that it's user error, right? The one common denominator is the same person is going through all these tests, doing the same A and B and all that sort of stuff. That's me, right? So your first hypothesis could be, I have it wrong. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to listen to music. I'm full of crap. Okay, if that's what you think, you're entitled to your opinion. But the problem is you're not sitting here listening to these headphones back and forth. And if that's the position you take, that I am full of crap, I'm full of shit, essentially, is what you're telling me, or I don't know how to listen, then I beg the question to you, how do you know that other people who are giving this pair of headphones glowing review are doing an honest job? That they know how to listen, that they're actually doing A and B tests, that they are showing their work, that they have anything not vested in recommending the LCD-1. In other words, what do they get possibly for recommending the LCD-1? I mean, you can't just have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, this is the rule I'm going to impose on you, and yet I'm going to choose not to impose it on somebody else because I said so. That's not fair-mindedness, and that's certainly not the way I would promote you to consider the issues. In the alternative, I submit that the best way to actually get to the root of a problem, of an issue, of a concern, is to take several steps back and honestly assess and analyze the facts as they present themselves to you. At this point, I am very comfortable telling you that the LCD-1 is not worth $400. I'm very comfortable telling you that the LCD-1 is a decent headphone, but it's nowhere close to worth the $400. I'm comfortable telling you that the LCD-1 does not excel in anything, in any aspect, at all. Zero. Now, I was going to save this for the overall conclusion of the LCD-1, which is going to come at some point. I've written the script out and everything. But I'll tell you now that I'm struggling to find the raison d'etre for the LCD-1. I'm struggling to find its reason to be. Its niche. Where should the LCD-1 be? What mountain is this a king of? And I can't find one. Now, initially, what some people claimed is that the LCD-1 is the sub-$500 headphone you need to get. So we've conducted those tests of the sub-$500 category. We did it with the HD6XX/650. We did it with the Sundara. And now we're doing it with the I'm not going to say bottom of the barrel, because that denigrates the headphone here, but really, really cheap headphone. And the LCD-1 still can't compete. It can't. So you have a pair of headphones that, build-wise, they don't excel in build at all. They're not $400 build. They're $400 build as standard, meaning Beats, Bose, some Sonys, they charge $400 for the same build quality. You laugh at Beats and Bose. You hate Beats and Bose, right? You disregard Beats and Bose for many reasons. And the build quality happens to be one of those reasons. And so you have an audiophile company releasing a headphone that has the same build quality, no better. The same build quality. It's compact, it folds up. Well, yeah, it certainly does. You're right, it does fold up. But so does this. So the LCD-1 doesn't do something unique in that regard. But the LCD-1 has planar magnetic drivers, and it's the best you can get for under $500. But then you have the Sundara that, on the worst day, the Sundara performs as good as the LCD-1, and that's the worst day. But on an average day, the Sundara will sound better than the LCD-1 for the number of reasons that I pointed out in that comparison. And you can get very similar response, sound signature, from a dynamic headphone like the HD6XX. That's been around for years. It's not even supposed to sound like a planar magnetic, and yet this planar magnetic sounds a lot like the HD6XX in many respects. And then you have this cheap dynamic driver headphone with 40mm drivers that has more clarity, more detailed retrieval, more separation of frequencies, better separation of multiple vocalists, How? For $50 to $60, how is that possible? Well, the reason is very simple. It's just not about magic, right? It's not about, as I said in the last video, it's not about Rane commercial putting in some mojo here. It's not about having technology that is far superior to anything that Audeze has. That's not the case at all. I think it's a different way of interpreting the information. You were primed to believe that the Audeze LCD-1 is a mixing and mastering headphone. You were primed from the very beginning, before you even had the option of buying this, before you had the option of getting it in your hands. People were telling you how you should interpret the sound. And they told you in no uncertain terms that this is a mixing and mastering headphone. And so when you are told to look at that perspective, you expect certain criteria to be ticked off, to be checked off. The LCD-1 simply doesn't do it. The bass response is fairly light. There's not good separation between sub-bass and mid-bass. There's a bit of muddiness between the bass and the mids. There's not sufficient separation of the mids frequencies with multiple vocalists. There's significant roll-off in the treble energy. There's a loss of detail and micro-detail. The soundstage is narrow. Now, for an open bag especially, right? I'm telling you all this because I want you to understand the facts that are before us. Then we go to the Audeze website, and Audeze's website has a lot of this marketing stuff. And one of the quotes is, quote, "Wow, this has to be the most detailed and most masterfully tuned treble in a high-efficiency headphone I've heard at anywhere near this price," end quote. Most detailed and most masterfully tuned treble. I have no idea what masterfully tuned treble is supposed to mean. That provides zero information of any worth. But the most detail is significantly wrong. That is not the case. We've done the test already. We did the test, right? So it doesn't provide the treble energy. It doesn't provide the clarity. It doesn't provide micro detail retrieval. It doesn't provide separation. And so what detail are we talking about here that the LCD-1 excels at this price point, below $500? We have shown over and over and over again that the LCD-1 simply does not perform in the way marketed, the way promised. So you're promised detail, but if the treble response is so rolled off, if it's so muted, how can you possibly get that detail? What detail are you talking about? Does that kind of make sense? Overall, I can't say that the LCD-1 has anything that surpasses the Rane beyond that, right? I can live with that because I can do this. No more problem. But I cannot live with spending $400 for a pair of headphones that promise clarity, that promise detail, that promised mixing and mastering performance. It's the best, blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't. Ultimately, which headphone should you buy? Let's say you're sitting here and you're going, God, I really want an Audeze. $400 for an Audeze. Wow, that sounds like a fantastic deal. Time out. You might just be buying an Audeze for the name, not necessarily for quality. Now, you're going to get a listening experience from the Audeze that is not the same as on the Rane. And maybe that's the one you want. Maybe you want the Audeze listening experience. Maybe you want that gentle treble. Maybe you want the, lackluster mids response. Maybe you want the closed off soundstage. Maybe that's the type of headphone you're looking for. I get it. In which case, hey, now you have the information. If this is the type of sonic signature you're looking for, the LCD-1 might be a good option for you. But if you're being led by the nose by marketing, saying the LCD-1 is for mixing and mastering, and going, wow, maybe I should for $400. It sounds like a good deal. It's not. It's not a good deal. You're being ripped off. Don't do it. There are alternatives. The Rane at $50, roughly, is a great alternative. The Sundara at $350, something like that, great alternative. The HD6XX, very good alternative. Sounds pretty much the same as the Audeze, frankly. Not a whole lot differentiating them, except for the fact the HD6XX actually has slightly wider soundstage. And that's the one key note here, that the Audeze is repeatedly beaten on the soundstage issue. There's not one headphone that I put it up against where I could say the Audeze sounds wider than the competitor headphone, because it doesn't. It always sounds more closed off than the competitor headphone, even a fully closed back headphone. So now you got to make a decision. What do you think? Do you think that perhaps the LCD-1 is not the headphone that Audeze is marketing it to be? Perhaps people who are being quoted on Audeze's website, their statements are being taken out of context. Perhaps the individuals who are shilling this product are not being completely honest with you. Or perhaps you don't want to trust anything I say, and you would instead spend $400 on this pair of headphones. That's totally up to you. You can do whatever you want. This is your money. But for those individuals who actually want a much more measured analysis of this sort of stuff, how many people are telling you, wait, you have to listen to these, you shouldn't jump to conclusions that these things are worth your money? Because I don't think they are. In fact, one person commented, I think yesterday or today, that the LCD-1 to them is probably worth no more than $300. And my response to that person was, I think you're being generous. I don't think these things are worth more than $200. In fact, $250 MSRP, that is what the price should be for these headphones. These are not $400 headphones, ladies and gentlemen, because they don't even beat the Sundara, which are at $350. And how dare Audeze charge you another $50 on top for that? These things don't beat the HD6XX. And they don't beat the $50 plastic headphone from a company you never knew made headphones. So, now you get to decide. Thanks a lot. Hopefully all of you have a wonderful beginning to your February. It's February 2020. And a pleasant end to your weekend. Take care.